And let me introduce the next speaker. It's Dr. Maria Falaleeva. She's the head of the international NGO EKAPRAEKT, and she will tell you about the climate change and urban water infrastructure, challenges and solutions. Please, Maria, are you here? Do you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Hello, nice to hear
Okay,
you.
great. Yeah, sorry, thank you very much. And yeah, can you see my screen now?
Yeah, perfect.
That's perfect. Dear colleagues, thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me to speak. And this take into account that I work for Belarus, but I also work for other countries in the Baltic Sea region. It's very nice to join the Belarusian crew. And my presentation, just to slightly change the topic from Belarus only, my presentation will be related to the broader topic of what's a climate change in urban and water infrastructure, and what is the challenge in solutions in the seas all and the Baltic Sea region. But before we start, I would like to, do you see my screens changing? Because I don't really, I cannot really. Okay, so I think it's just slow. So before we start, I would like to write you in the chat to look at this picture that I think you're all very familiar with, and to write in the chat what kind of SDG you would traditionally associate with water in the city. And so that writing in the chat is much easier than to use a Mentimeter, I suppose. So again, you are very, very welcome to open the chat box and to write it down. And because I don't see the chat box, I think, Elena, if you can help me, if you can see what people write in the chat, and if you can read it just out of loud.
Yeah, definitely. CDG 6.
Yep, CDG 6, which is a water and sanitation. Is there any other ideas?
So, colleagues, please be active. The third, good health.
So the third, good health, well-being, and the third answer, let's just wait for the third answer before we'll move on.
12.
And SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. All right, so, and I think this is for everyone, it's obvious that CDG 6, or as so-called water SDG, is the most obvious choice. And however, if we speak about the water in the city, I think that first we look at least 3 SDG. This is a water 6, this is 11 sustainable city, and this is a climate change, if we speak in the context of climate change. However, if we think about water in the city, it is also everything which is related to environment. It's life below water, because we are in the Baltic Sea region. This is life of land. It's everything which is related to human health. As someone rightly said, this is a good health. And also in our region, this is a zero hunger, because water is important and no poverty. This is everything which is related to production, because we need water for production. We need water for responsible consumption and circular economy. And we need water, and we use energy for treating water. And this is everything which is really, not everything, but partly, which is related to inequality, because the water supply, even in the northern developing country, has a gender aspect and have a inequality or inequality or equality aspects. And this is, of course, education, information, and the strong governmental institution, everything which is related to the planning. So just like in the nature, when water penetrates everything, we can see that water penetrates everything in the city, in our life, and in the management. And if we look closer to the Baltic Sea region, this is already like Irina. If we look at how cities in the Baltic Sea region work now, we can see that, as we can all expect it, BSR is a highly urbanized region. And the thing is, species in BSR, such as a population, distributed very unequally. We have a coastal species, we have non-coastal species, which means we would have a quite different problems related with water. And urbanization is growing, and rural areas are shrinking. And urbanization, urban area growing because of migration, rural-urban migration, but because of external migration. And we have variety of impacts because we have variety of species, and the most species in the country which has access to the coast are coastal species. So how we can deal with this variety? So like on the top of this variety, we have a variety of climate impact, because when we see, again, we are Baltic Sea region, the first things that may come in mind, this is a sea level rise. However, the situation with the sea level rise in Baltic Sea region is quite tricky. On the one hand, sea level is rising because it's rising because of the climate change, but because the area of the Nordic country is naturally increasing as a compensation of kind of post-glacial period, we can see here that for different scenarios, the impact of sea level rise as such will not be too high. And we can, even for kind of the quite pessimistic scenario, RSP 8.5, so we can see the changes are not really big. However, and for people who are not really familiar with how sea level rise work, and especially I hope that there are some students here, and when we speak about like 20 meters, 20 centimeters of sea level rise, we can think it's actually not much. But if we're speaking about increasing of storm activity, we should keep in mind that even increase of sea level, of absolute sea level of 10 centimeters may mean increase of storm wave for meters or two, which means so all our kind of protection infrastructure for such a small sea level rise can become quite vulnerable. And this is also how Irina said in the first presentation. And for all the region, the general amount of precipitation, and which means the general amount of river runoff, will not change significantly. However, we will have some changes. And as we see now in the kind of optimistic scenario, 1.5 degree of global warming, river runoff in some area will decrease, in some area will increase. However, we know that we have really struggling now, and we're not nearly going under this pessimistic scenario. So we would rather go in for like a +3 degree global warming, and we can see that along the we can see like in all the region, the river runoff is likely to decrease. However, again, it can be very, very different from country to country. So how the issue of the region can respond on these challenges, which is quite uncertain and controversial, and how we can become climate resilient and water-wise cities. So if we're speaking about climate impacts of urban water infrastructure, we can say in generally, so we have 3 challenges. First is too little water, because we need water, we need a fresh water for humans, but also we need the water for plants, we need the water for industry. Second is too much water, because we have a floods and flood risk. I think it's obvious, everybody would observe it during the last decades. And the water quality, we need drinking water, but we also need a sort of decent quality water which goes from urban area into the sea and into the river. Otherwise, we will call pollution. And if we speak about how the water system works in urban area, we should take into account that urban areas is a quite specific environment. And alongside with the climate and location, other factors are also playing significant role on how the urban water infrastructure work. First, the urban area is characterized by a quite high area of so-called sealed surfaces, when we have a concrete and asphalt, which highly impact of how the surface runoff works. And here on the picture, we can see that the changes in the land cover can really impact of the kind of the amount of runoff. If we're speaking about the natural ground cover, so about 10% of water which goes on the ground goes out the ground directly to the rivers in the sea. But if we speak about 75–100% of sealed surfaces, so about 1/2 of the water which goes to the surface goes somewhere. It goes to the drains, or it goes to the river, it goes to the sea. And this is also the surface cover kind of impacts transpiration, but not as much. But still, like for example, if we have a green natural cover, it transpires much more water. Why is important in terms of climate? Because, for example, when we have a more moisture in the water and it creates much more comfortable environment, it can reduce impact of overheating. So it can just create much more healthy environment. So like more natural, more healthy, and more kind of effective urban, more effective water system is. And of course, the factor which influence how successful is water in the urban areas is how generally urban development and planning organized, and how water management is organized. And at the moment, the most of our cities looks like that. So the water which goes to the surface is collected into underground drains and goes to the river or the sea. Well, in the best cases is treated well, but in the many cases is not treated really well. And in many cases it causes floods because it stays in the pavements, and it causes pollution. And the most of the floods in the city are caused not by only one factor, a combination of factors. That's why for coastal cities, for example, this is a classical when you have a sea, when you have a high tide in combination with a really kind of heavy rain, you have a really heavy flood. And I don't know, maybe not everybody knows that in an urban flood, in an urban area, we have a very specific type of floods, which called urban floods or sewage system floods, because in the urban area, the most urban flood doesn't look like that. And the most urban flood looks like that because it's maybe less spectacular, but it's much more normal, and unfortunately it's quite costly, and it's also can cause a very, very kind of bad effects. So the good news about this is that in the first picture we can hardly manage something like that. On the second picture we can manage something like that, building more effective water system. And on the top of that, so when we speak about the urban water system, we should take into account that water system also influence of greenhouse gas emission. So about 4% of global energy, it goes to the wastewater treatment and in general treatment of water infrastructure. It maybe sounds like not much, but 4%, this is still significant. And this is when we speak about greenhouse gas emission from water system, we're not only speaking about CO2, we're mostly speaking about such gases like methane and nitrogen oxide, which is much, much more so-called potent than CO2. For example, methane has a 34 times more effect on greenhouse pollution than CO2, and on nitrogen dioxide, as you see, this affects even more because nitrogen oxide is in 200, almost 300 more potent than CO2 in terms of greenhouse gas emission. So we need to adapt to the new condition, and we need to mitigate effect of climate change and reducing greenhouse gas emission. So how we can do this? And the first and foremost, when we speak about urban water system, we need to think about integrity and complexity in the water management, because as we see on the first part of the presentation, we constantly need to balance. We need to balance too little water with too much water and with water quality. We need to balance climate adaptation and mitigation. We need to balance different measures, gray measures like sea walls and all this kind of technical infrastructure with a green and with soft measures, and this is a governmental measure and the different kind of planning decision. So we need to balance the objective of urban development with climate resilience, local knowledge with innovation, and we need to balance interest and input of different stakeholders. This is the city administration and the public and the businesses. And all of them have interest, but all of them can have a certain input. And one of these, of course, not only one, but one of the most popular and most discussed solution in this area, this is very complex. This is sustainable urban drainage system, so-called SUDS. And this is example of natural-based solution and ecosystem services. And it make our city, which we saw on the first picture, looks like that. So what we do? Let's say we do not fight with water, and instead of letting it go, we try to keep it. We try to keep it for the time when we need it, and we try to soak it in the ground for the time when we don't need it. how we can do this? There are several methods, and for example, creation rain gardens and rainwater harvesting, so-called temporary flooded spaces. Like for example, it's absolutely okay if you have a city square which on the time of heavy rain turns to the pool. And we try to introduce more surface, permeable surface, which infiltrates water, green roofs, and several other methods. So how it looks in reality, it looks more or less like that. This is a picture mostly from UK. And I deliberately put not only pretty pictures, because sometimes people represent like sustainable urban drainage system like a total paradise. It may look quite not ugly but bleak, as you see on the top left pictures, but still it's much nicer than the normal wastewater sewage treatment. But it can look really, really beautiful and aesthetic, as you can see on the bottom right picture. This is a Sheffield, and if you see, if combined with a really kind of this very high technology, very smart urban planning with a really kind of nice landscape design, it really can turn, like literally turn our urban areas as a paradise. Because this bottom right example is a Sheffield. It's one of the most exemplary case of sustainable drainage system. And also there is several solutions how we can reduce the greenhouse gas emission. And first is the harvest nutrients, because the loss of nutrients which cause greenhouse gas pollution, if it keeps in the system, it can be actually nutrients for plants. So we cause pollution by losing very important resource. And also reducing energy consumption and maybe using more kind of sustainable energy. And there is like several decisions during the cycle. But of course, the most effective approach is combine everything and turn our city into so-called Waterwise cities. And International Water Association, IWA, suggests 17 different areas, different areas of actions, how we can do this. And as you can see, like from 4 blocks, only 2 that something relate to something that we normally think about urban areas and waters. This is regenerative water services and basin connected cities, and 2 others, water sensitive urban design and water-wise communities, something that we normally don't think, because these communities and how we work with communities, how we organize can actually help water management in the cities. And this is something that we need to take into account. And this is the different areas like vision, governance, knowledge and capacity, planning tools, implementation tools. So everything is involved. So how we're doing in Baltic states? And the Baltic states actually in Baltic Sea face quite the same challenges like all other areas in the world, but being mostly developed countries. So this several cities really take initiative and doing something about this. And here is like several examples from the very, very interesting resource called Baltic Smart Water Hub that you can check yourself for teaching and studying. And one example is in the city of Riga. There is a example of the sustainable urban drainage system, multifunctional green and blue corridor, the project which is still under development, and we can see the cost of the project was about 6 million euro. So is it much or it's not? It's quite a lot of money, of course. However, for big cities, for capital like Riga, it's not absolutely immense amount of money. This is more or less what the normal sewage system would cost. But if we build this multifunctional green and blue corridor, it creates us much more benefit on all level, on all SDG, if you want to look at this way, than the normal sewage system, which would only address water treatment. Another example, also quite visible. So this is the city of Stockholm, more than 10 years ago, create system which drains water which goes from the urban surface directly towards the root of the plants. And you can see the big difference. So this is the first tree is in the beginning of the project in 2002. And the second one, much more healthy, much more green, much more beautiful in 2013. And of course, because if we speak about the city surface runoff, we have quite a lot of toxic substance, so that, for example, it not just kind of direct water to the tree, because tree may die, you know, from all the kind of oils and all the dust that we have from urban surfaces. So the project creates 3-layer of natural filtering to ensure that water which goes to the root of the trees are relatively clean. So in the result, we can see on the picture, I think it's kind of, it's not much to add. And speaking about Belarus, going slightly back to Belarus, what I can say, and unfortunately, these projects are in Belarus, well, I would say quite rare or not existent. And one reason for this, because it really creates a lot of integration between departments, stakeholders. And several years ago, our organization would try to implement something like that in the city of Mogilев. And that was only partly successful project because it creates a lots of intervention, let's say, and even for a local community, it creates a quite big kind of changes in the environment, and not everybody from urban administration and even from local people were ready for that. However, I think this is the future. This project will be developed. This is just 2 examples. And if you go to the Baltic Smart Water Hub, you can find much more in the very different areas. And as a sort of take-home message, and maybe as a question of maybe it's topic for comments, I would like you to think about what a solution your city can offer to others in the Baltic Sea region. So what is the main challenges for your city, and what is the main insight? What is your vision? What is your dreams about your cities and urban water infrastructure? And as you also see, because we are in the Baltic Sea, we're in the Baltic University programs, and there is lots of teachers and students here. So this is a really endless topic of research, of course paper, of diploma paper from absolutely everyone, from pure engineers and geographers to the people who are doing the social science. So this is a really cool, exciting topic, and I really think that's, we will talk about this in EKAPRAEKT. And more information you can find on Baltic Smart Water Hub, BSR platform, water platform, that again, as I said, very valuable resources. And those of you who are interested in the broader topic of urban and climate and who read Russian, you are very, very welcome to read my book, New City for New Climate, which was just released last year. So, and that's it, I think, from me. Thank you very much. So you're very, very welcome to ask a question and make a comment.
Thank you very much, Maria. It's a very interesting presentation, and I like it very much, and especially I like those wonderful flowers behind you. Well, and we have several questions to you. How can we use natural-based solutions in an Eastern European city like Minsk? Will it be different from similar solutions in Eastern European cities?
Well, you know, Minsk is a really good example, because it's actually, Minsk is one of the, maybe I would even say that maybe one of the really in the world example of natural-based solution, because I think that the one who is familiar, at least slightly familiar with the city of Minsk, knows that in more than 50 years ago, when Minsk was restored after World War II, and one of the elements of the urban infrastructure was so-called water green diameter. And this is a valley of the Sewage River, which goes like really across all the city, and which was supposed, in fact, to be that sort of natural-based solution for whole city. And that will be really purification of the air and water and everything. However, unfortunately, and especially during the last decade, this project, which was started to implement more than 15 years ago, was abandoned because of the conflict between the urban planning and an initial idea, you know, of how city needs to be developed. This is a pure, I would say, the pure commercial interest, and that was also public campaign several years ago to protect this water green diameter. And I think if you were speaking for Minsk, like my first things would be like, okay, let's protect what we already have, because it's very unique. And if other cities, like lots of very densely built cities of Western Europe now try to find the special spaces how to introduce these green zones. And now in Minsk, it already exists. We just need to really kind of not kill it. One thing. And another thing, what I can say, as you see that from the picture of the natural-based solution, there are lots of things. You can see that lots of plants which is native and semi-native, and lots of meadow plants, because the plants create a really, and plants, I mean this, the grasses and little flowers, because plants create a really good environment. It keeps water. And unfortunately, in many Eastern European cities, especially in Belarus, people like everything tidy, not people maybe, but administration. And people really like to cut all the grass. And this is almost like if you don't have a grass, it's kind of tidy, it's nice. If you have a kind of high grass, it's not tidy, which means it's not nice. And this is absolutely contradicts the modern logic of urban development, because you still need to keep, if you want to keep a nature, if you want to keep a water and biodiversity, you need to let things go. You need to let kind of plants go and grass grow and do things natural way. However, yes, it creates it's need maybe, I wouldn't say additional, because it's quite a laborious job to cut the grass, you know, several times during the summer, but it's created just different type of treatment. It creates education for the people who are taking care for the municipal services. It creates needs to education for the local community who may help to maintain the system. And I think just really changing mindset. So everything is possible, but like absolutely in every place in the world, things need to be done.
Okay, thank you very much. And I guess we have some more minutes for a question. And a quite interesting question is in our chat. Maybe, Maria, you may see it. From Dominique, right? Don't you think that beyond the mitigation strategies, as well as adaptation to climate change, we will unfortunately be forced to implement the third strategy of limitation, losses, negative effects of climate change, especially in highly urbanized areas? What do you think?
Yeah, I would say my answer would be like, it depends. And I think it's now we're in a very, very interesting time, because there's a lot of technologies available. And I mean, when I mean technologies, I mean technology, kind of great technologies, but also knowledge and innovation in terms of like natural-based solution and everything. And but the general tendencies is now, especially when we're speaking about urban climate adaptation, the lots of technologies or methods which is mostly effective in the long run would need lots of investment now. Like, for example, like sustainable urban drainage system and creation the urban areas. Yes, it's costly, because it's not only you plant the tree, you need to support it. However, if you really calculate the cost, how much you save on the, again, on the avoiding floods, how much you save on the urban health, how much you save on the all other things. So you can, because it's like it's proven several times, it really works, it's beneficial. However, for this, you need to have a vision. You need to have a, let's say, like urban government with a vision. You need to have people who would calculate, who would have an economical calculation, and people who will be open to the new solutions. And you need to people who would implement. And this is like, I would say, the maybe shorter answer. From the times of the Nicholas Stern report, we all do know that timely adaptation costs less than dealing with effects in the certain times. But however, it's obvious, but urban and administrations and all actors involved need to understand this and look for different, because my presentation is very, very simple, as you see, but I didn't even touch into all these like mechanism of financing and green bonds and how the urban administration can do this. There are methods, but you need to be eager to implement it. I would say like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We have some more questions, even from Tim Schlender. One more question. What are the solutions for consuming large amounts of solar heat in cities with wide avenues?
For consuming what?
Consuming large amounts of solar heat in cities with wide avenues. What are the solutions for that, for consuming?
Solar heat in what? Sorry.
You may see, this is the question. Okay, this is the question from the chat from Tim Schlender. Yeah, because I guess the sound is not quite stable.
Yes, sounds a bit.
Yeah.
So I see. Thank you, Tim. What is the solution for consuming large amount of solar heat in cities with wide avenues? I think the same, because it's also like there is a like green areas, developing green areas, and this there are all very interesting examples how you transform the cities, and you can, because again, like if we speak about the city, it's all complex. Why we need wide avenues? First of all, we need wide avenues because we need lots of car, because our cities is designed now in such a way that we need lots of cars. But if we're speaking about not about roads, about mobility, so if we really kind of make a complex plan, maybe we can reduce amount of cars, and then we'll have a possibility not to have a really wide roads, and then we can break the system with a kind of like green areas or something like this. So that could be possible. And but in other things with a heat, and still like if we have a wide avenues, it's quite a lot of actually reduction of the heat can be done with changing surfaces. Instead of doing like black asphalt, you can do some sort of light surfaces, and that was already reducing heat. Or for example, if you can plant the trees close to the building, which is adjusted to the road, you cannot reduce the heat on the road, but you can reduce the comfort. You can increase the comfort in the buildings. It's because again there is a like really different solution, but you need to think in a very complex way about this, which is unfortunately missing in many places now.
Okay, thank you. And one more question. Do you see a trend of not planting grass in urban areas? Instead, plant forests, for example, meadows, to increase biodiversity and decrease management?
Yelena, I think I not seen the trends of the planting grass and then?
Yes, in urban areas, and instead plant forests, for example, meadows, to increase biodiversity and decrease management.
I would say it really depends, because it's not everywhere you can plant the forest. I think one doesn't replace another, because if you have densely populated urban areas, you cannot implant the forest. You cannot build a central park like in New York in every city now. You cannot demolish the buildings. So that's why I say that it's all about kind of the best solution for this specific place. But what is interesting is also like an anecdote I can say that was several years ago. I saw that that was some sort of report about the most promising profession for the future, and one of the list was actually park ecologist. The person who can really see not just pure ecology, but who can really kind of combine social impact and the climate change impact with the knowledge about the trees and where to plant what, because urban green infrastructure is another big topic. It should serve, we invest in this, and we invest a lot in terms of money, resources. It should really serve specific purpose. So that's every little helps. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria. Well,
thank you.
And we have to move to the next speaker. That is